men's basketball team turned out to be elite after all. We're going to talk about Clemson's sensational NCAA tournament run, which unfortunately came up just a little bit short. And then we're going to talk all things spring football, the Clemson orange and white spring game coming up on Saturday. And we're going to tell you everything to expect when the Tigers take the field in Death Valley for the first time in 2024. All coming up on this episode of Around the Paw. So sit back, relax, and let's talk Tigers. So, guys, let's talk about the Clemson basketball team leading off this episode. I tell you what a magical run through the NCAA tournament. And certainly, I don't know that it shut up all of the Brad Brownell haters, but I think it did silence a large contingent of them. But still, very disappointing to see it come to an end the way it did, especially against an Alabama team that Clemson had beaten fairly handily in the regular season. And really an Alabama team I don't consider to be all that good.
Yeah, I just will say it was a magical run. That do I think the three of us would come out here and say that Clemson would be an Elite Eight team when the bracket came out on March 17th? Maybe not, but boy, was it an exciting run. And, you have to give credit to Alabama, to Nate Oates, to Mark Sears especially. He was the kind of guy that extinguished that Tiger fire that almost allowed Clemson to get to their first Final Four in school history. But, looking back at this season, this was a incredible season to remember. If you look at the beginning of the year, you had big wins over teams like South Carolina, who was, undefeated going into that game. TCU, you have that Alabama win, and then you go into conference play and had the North Carolina win in Chapel Hill. And then, when everything looked bad going into Boston College in the ACC tournament, Chase Hunter flipped a switch, PJ Hall flipped a switch, and, running down 3 straight wins against incredible teams of New Mexico, Baylor, and Arizona. It was just a fun team to watch. And, being around campus during this whole run, everybody was talking about it. And everyone had this weird sort of feeling about how this tournament run was going. So, yeah, I'm proud to be a Clemson fan because of it. I'm proud that I stuck with Brad Brownell for a majority of the season. I think that he deserves it. It just sucks that it came to an end against a team that Clemson already beat earlier on this season. But I really think that this team should keep its head up. It was an incredible season, and I'm excited to see what's to come.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think it was – if you'd asked me at the beginning of the season, where do you want to see Clemson at the end of the year, I would have said the NCAA tournament. And, they made it the NCAA tournament. They beat the top, the second seed and the third seed. And that's hard to do. So, and like you said, everybody, it's almost like the team just flipped a switch. And when PJ wasn't having his good game, when he was having foul trouble, you had Godfrey and Wiggins step up, and and it felt like they made their big strides. I think going into next year, you've got I think he'll be a major contributor. I think both of them will. So just hope for the best, man. I mean, I think we got a good crew coming back. I think a lot of the guys are sticking with us. Who knows? Even Chase Hunter might stay.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. So we will have to see what happens. But it was a great run. I hope we make the little music thing, the one shining moment thing. I think we'll be in that video. I really do. If we're not, I'll be super pissed. Because we beat the number 2 seed and the number 3 seed.
Shining moments along the way.
We sure did.
Oh,
and if we're not in that, video, I will be super pissed. And I mean, I think we had a great run. I think it's just building momentum, man. And I think next year, I think if we get a big guy and maybe pull one guard, out of the portal, I think we're going to be great. I think we'll be back there next year. Talk about a big guy. You're talking about a big guy, one that should be back next year for Clemson, and who really just blew me away with the way he played in the tournament. He elevated his game. He was good all season.
but he elevated his game to new heights in the 4 tournament games, and that was Ian Shefflin. Ian Shefflin played out of his mind in the NCAA tournament. I was so proud of that guy.
I completely agree, and this is a guy that I could see having an all ACC spot next season. You're most likely the team is going to be centralized around him, and he truly does what the team needs. You know, sometimes he'll have 4 points, but you know, on the other side, he'll have 12, 13 rebounds. That's just the type of guy you have for Ian Shefflin, and he made some huge shots down the stretch. Another guy that I really liked during this tournament run was RJ Godfrey. He's going to most likely be a starter next season because I don't know about Jack Clark's eligibility. I know that he potentially has a 7th year. I'm not entirely sure, but that would be huge to get back. But another one would be Chase Hunter. Josh Beadle entered the transfer portal today. So whether that means Chase Hunter will go, whether Chase Hunter will come back for a 6th year or a transfer is lined up already, that might be saying something. But that's all I know. But Shefflin, Godfrey, especially that front court. But you can't forget about Chase Hunter. He was the story of this Tigers run for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't know that Beadle transferred. So that's huge. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really been on Twitter today, so that's a surprise to me. But I think with him leaving, I think Chase might stay. I think it depends on whether he gets what he gets from all the draft people. But I think that might help with him staying now that Beadle left. I mean, because Beadle was one of the guys I feel like who came in for him at some point during the season. So we'll see. You just don't know.
But it's crazy because so many of these guys, even some of the best players in the league in the ACC, are staying now for 4, 5, 6 years. Right after the Sweet 16, right after Alabama defeated North Carolina, R.J. Davis, the ACC Player of the Year, announced that he was returning for a 5th year at North Carolina. So, yeah. So a lot of these guys are rather than going pro, I just have to wonder if the NIL prospects are better than some of their professional prospects right now, and that's keeping them in college.
That most likely is what it is. It's going to be NIL because RJ Davis is not going to be a 1st-round pick in the NBA. I think that he's a fantastic player, but scouts say that he's maybe a little bit undersized, maybe not a best defender compared to other guards, and he'd make a larger amount of money being at a blue blood school, being their top name guy. I think the same thing could go with Chase. I don't think Chase would be drafted in the first 2 rounds. Maybe you can make a summer league team, but I think at the end of the day, if looking at it through a realistic standpoint, I think if he does leave next year to go play professionally, he'll most likely be overseas. So it's the point of whether you want to be Clemson's top guy working with an NIL deal, making money off that, or playing overseas. But he just had a kid too, which is something to keep in mind. Having a family is huge. Living around the Atlanta area, his brother's still on the team. So a lot of factors going into that, but NIL is huge, and you're seeing a lot of these big name players stay because of all of these NIL stuff, because they're making a lot more money compared to what could be if they went to the NBA or played overseas or whatnot.
And I think Cliff's muted.
Yeah, I wasn't really going to say much. Yeah, I wasn't really going to say much more about that. So let's just move on.
Right. Well, the last thing I would say in regards to basketball, then we're going to move on to football in the spring game. But Cliff, have you been surprised at all that Alabama has shot the ball as well as they have in the NCAA tournament? Because look, frankly, going into that Elite Eight game, I was stunned they beat North Carolina. North Carolina, talent-wise, is probably 25 points better than Alabama. And, all right, you know what? Surprised they upset them. They shot the ball well above their means, and then they come out and shoot it even better against Clemson. I think they hit, 15, 16 threes? Come on now. Come on. That Alabama team is not that good.
Yeah, they got lucky on some of those threes, and And one of the guys that hit a bunch of threes normally doesn't hit them.
Sears?
So, I mean, yeah, no, Sears, I mean, he's their 3 guy, but I'm talking about the other guy he was like 5 for 10 or something like that. So, he usually doesn't hit threes. So we'll see what happens in the Final Four for them.
Yeah, I think UConn's going to boat race them either way. I don't think it matters. UConn is really, really good.
Yep.
UConn's my pick. They've been my pick the whole way. I don't see anybody beating them, honestly.
Well, I tell you what, either way you slice it, great tournament run for the Clemson Tigers. I think it was far above most people's expectations, something to be proud of. We're certainly proud of that team. Salute the guys who played their last game as a Tiger, who were either moving on or going pro. I think PJ Hall probably is a good chance he played his last game as a Clemson Tiger. You never know; he could come back, but just appreciate those guys and what they've done for the program.
Absolutely, yep. It's just
so,
people remember these seasons for the rest of their lives. I mean, being a Clemson student, I'm going to remember that, when Clemson made the Elite Eight, I was, sitting on my couch with a bunch of my friends watching, something crazy happening. So, credit to this team. It might help them down the road in terms of recruiting, in terms of transfers, of, a team that's able to be at the top of the ACC and playing with teams like Duke and UNC, and also making runs in national tournaments, making the Elite Eight, beating, teams of high quality like Baylor and Arizona. It helps out a lot in terms of the future as well for this team. So I'm excited to see how that all unfolds, especially in the offseason.
Yes, indeed. So great run for the team, but now we're going to turn our attention to football. Spring practice is wrapped up, and all that's left is the orange and white spring game. We look forward to it every year. The Clemson Tigers will take the field in Death Valley for the first time in 2024, at least for live competition anyway. So, guys, what's the prevailing thought going into the spring game Saturday? What are we looking for? And should people be how excited should people be to see this Tiger team in live action for the first time?
Yeah, I think that you're looking at a lot of good things on this Clemson side. Something that I'm really excited to look at is, these mid-year enrollees. This is what I'm always looking forward to in terms of the spring game. The two that jump off the cut right away are Bryant Wesco and Sammy Brown on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. But another thing I think is that there are a lot of players out. Dabo announced, I forget the amount of players. I think it was about 7 or 8 as soon as the teams were announced. A lot of them were out with injury. And from what I've heard, through today and throughout the day, is that some of these players, there might be more injuries going on, that some of these players might not play the whole scrimmage or, play certain snaps or maybe practice, not scrimmage, and just stay on the sidelines. So that means a lot of the younger talent that might not have those typical chances to shine. This is their moment. So I'm really excited to look for, an under the radar type player, a guy, like I forget who it was last year, but there was a guy that made a couple of huge plays, and I think it was Dominique Thomas, and he ended up being the third string, making some key runs and big moments for Clemson last year. So I really think there's a lot to be, excited about in terms of the underclassmen, the freshmen, the sophomores, because, a lot of these older guys might be out nursing injuries, just trying to do their best to recover before the fall.
Yeah, again, I'm a little late to that party because I have not watched the Dabo press conference, but yeah, I'm excited to see these mid years, especially the receivers, and I'm excited to see where Cade is in his progress, along with Sammy Brown, transferring in, or not transferring in, I'm sorry, coming in as a freshman. I meant to say transitioning from high school to college, right? And I'm excited to see where the defensive backs are, right? I mean, almost everybody back there is, if I'm not mistaken, it's either a sophomore or a freshman, and so I think you're going to see a lot of new faces. I love the way they split up the roster. I did look at the rosters, so I love the way they split up the roster. I think it's going to be you're going to see some guys that you haven't seen before. And like you said, there are going to be some guys who will have a chance to have their one shining moment.
Well, hopefully not just their one. We're
well,
hoping
you know what I
these are
mean.
guys that are going to be stars
Exactly.
throughout the whole season.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean. You're going to see some guys that you probably won't see in the regular season.
Now, two of the guys who are going to be out Saturday that jump off the page, one in particular is Peter Woods. And that's a shame because I was really looking forward to seeing what he looked like at the defensive end position. So the fact that he's not going to be able to go on Saturday, it's a little bit disappointing to me.
Yeah, he's out with mono, and obviously that sucks. Best of, recovery to him. But again, that just leads the way for other guys, for these younger guys that could potentially make that spark. That's my 2 cents on it. You sometimes have to look at the bright side of things. And whoever's, because he is on the Orange roster, and Chris Rumpf is a coach on that team. So you never know. You never know what could happen, honestly. And another thing that I'm really excited for, to see this center carousel of who's going to be their guy. Because obviously the loss of Will Putnam running out of eligibility leaves it with Ryan Linthicum, who was kind of the successor. But you've seen guys like Trent Howard and I forget his name, Harris Sewell, who have all been kind of rotating in as playing center snaps. So that's something I'm really excited to see, how Howard and Sewell were on the line throughout the season, and switching into a center, it's a lot different than playing those outside positions. So that's something that I'll be looking into for sure. Something that I'll be looking into more in depth than other positions. I'm kind of interested to see how some of these position battles, like similarly to Cade and Chris Vizina, I think that will be a fun one to watch. See how far the difference is between those two. Has Vizina taken that next step, or has Cade taken that next step? Those are two position groups that we'll be looking at for sure.
Yeah, another one that I'm really not worried about, but excited to see who steps up is the kicking game, right? When it comes to place kicking, and is Gunn the man, or are we going to see the new guy? We've heard great things about the new guy. We know that Gunn struggled, and then Whites came in and took the position from him for place kicking, at least. We know the guy's got a leg, but can he just get it's all mental for him. So can he, get it right between his head, but between his ears, and make it happen. And to be honest with you, I don't think we're really going to know anything in the spring game about that. I don't think we'll really know anything about that until Georgia, until he's placed under pressure against Georgia to make a kick, which I think he will be, But from what I did I did see a quote that said that Dabo did say about, he thought Gunn was a little bit more accurate, or a little bit more accurate over the spring than the other guy. I can't remember his last name.
Nolan Hoser.
Hoser. I saw that quote. So maybe Gunn has getting it right between his ears. Who knows? Well, that's what I'm really excited about.
Well, I'll tell you what, look, we will always love Jonathan Whites for what he did last year, but please, let's not have to go pull a kicker out of retirement and keep him from an accounting career for 4 months this year. That would be preferable.
Yeah, honestly, ain't that the truth? But I think that.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Griff.
You're all good.
Yeah, so. And you mentioned this, and one guy that I'm really, again, and I'll just reiterate it because I'm excited to see him play as well. You mentioned Bryant Westco, and every single report that we've read, everything that has matriculated out of spring practice is that this kid is as advertised. He was one of the top 3 receivers in the country coming out of Midlothian, Texas. And by all accounts, he has lived up to the hype and is really, really good.
Yeah, well, the only thing that was a concern among a couple of the coaches and a couple of scouts was his weight. He is 170 pounds, but as football goes along and moving into college football, that weight goes up. So that's something I'm not really worried about. And I was actually reading a report from Bleacher Report that was like the 10 biggest 10 players that have turned the most heads, and Bryant Westcott was on one of them, which I think is incredible. But
Yeah,
he has a chance to shine. With Cole Turner, Tyler Brown, and Troy Stellato out with injuries, I think that that opens the gate for him. I think that he'll get a lot more touches. I don't know the team that he's on. He might be on the Orange team. Yeah. So he'll be paired up with Cade, who
that's
I
good.
assume
I think that's good.
guy.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I completely agree. And you're working with kind of that first team line. You're being paired up with guys like Antonio Williams, Adam Randall. Tyler Brown was on that team, but he's injured. Jake Brenningstool as well. He's just a guy that I think that's just destined for greatness with the position that he's in right now. I think that he'll make a couple big catches, especially this weekend.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with you. I saw those same reports where the only thing they were worried about was West Coast weight, and I'm like you. I don't think he needs to gain a lot because I think he's right there at the 170 weight. I think maybe 165, 170.
170, maybe a little bit over now.
Yeah, so I'm thinking really, to be honest with you, all he probably needs to gain is about 10 pounds, 5 to 10 pounds, and over the course of a season, I think he can do that easy. I think he can do that before the first game. So
yeah, but you don't want him to gain so
really,
much that it affects his speed because he's really
no.
That's
Exactly. That's why I said 5 to 10 and not 10 to 20. Yeah, I don't. You definitely don't want to mess with his speed, because that's kind of what's got him noticed and catching the ball, of course. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that, especially the Orange team. With Westco and Cade and Moffa's on the Orange team, so it's almost like they put all the one. They said they weren't going to do that, but then they did, and and so it's like I'm excited to see that. So Vizina, or how do you say his name? Vizina.
You
What?
got it?
Yeah, and so I'm excited to see how much he stepped up. So because this is where we're going to do it. I think this is where you're going to see it. Because I really don't think he's going to get that much playing time during the season, unless Cade gets hurt or Cade just totally comes out struggling, which I don't see that happening.
Right. Well, in another position group that I'm really I'm excited to see them, but I'm anxious to see them as well. And that's the offensive line. I really want to see what steps these guys have taken since they've come under the tutelage of Matt Luke.
Yeah, that's another group for sure, especially with the amount of shuffling that they did towards the latter half of the season. I'm just excited to see how they're going to line up. Most of the starters, guys like Tristan Lee, Marcus Tate, Blake Miller, they're all on the same team. They're on the Orange team. Walker Parks isn't playing in the scrimmage, and then Ryan Linthicum is also a part of that group as their center. But yeah, I'm just interested to kind of see the same 5 guys for this team instead of the shuffling and the zone blocking and that whole hullabaloo of all that. So I trust Matt. I trust Matt Luke. I think that he's a great recruiter, especially, but I think that he's a great developer of the offensive line position. And I'm excited to see not only if the group as a whole has taken the next step, but who specifically has taken the biggest step in terms of the offensive line.
Yeah, but my question is, will you see that if they're not on the same team?
I think maybe you
And
see it more on the individual level, just to see the progression from these guys in terms of how they block, how they move, schematically, how have they picked up on what Coach Luke wants them to do in terms of their blocking schemes. So I still think you'll be able to glean something from it.
Yeah, so you'll have to pay attention to individuals and not as a team. I don't know. My thing is, I don't know how you'll be able to see it as a team or as a solid five. But like you said, you'll have to really pay attention to the individual matchups, and when it comes to that side of the ball, and on both offenses, because you'll have. I mean, who's going to be the starting five this year, right? I really don't think they know that yet, to be honest with you. And I mean, they might, but I mean, we'll see. But you're really gonna have to pay attention to those individual matchups, like you were saying, to really know like how much they've learned and how much they've gained, how much knowledge they've gained from Matt Luke.
Well, I know this. We're all hungry for some Clemson football. And speaking of hungry, if you're just outright hungry, like I'm getting right now, then you need to go check out our sponsor, Ardens Burger and Grill at 1280 18 Mile Road Central. They're your one-stop shop for all of your game day needs, particularly on Saturday. So before you head over to Death Valley, go try out some of their double-dip wings, a mouth-watering burger, or one of their sizzling grills, and you can tell them the crew from around the Paul sent you. You will not be disappointed with Ardens Burger Grill at 1280 18 Mile Road Central. So, guys, before we wrap it up, we're looking forward to the spring game on Saturday. It always is going to be a lot of fun. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to make it over there. I'll watch it on TV, but I'm still looking forward to it. But before we sign off tonight, just really quickly, let's give a shout-out to the Clemson baseball team. They just keep on keeping on. And this team has really just been an offensive juggernaut.
Yes, they have. And go ahead, Griff. I don't know how much you paid attention because you said you were still in basketball mode, but go for it, brother.
I mean, I see these scores and, a run rule in Greenville on Tuesday. I'm slowly starting to get back into it. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff on social media, on Twitter, and, D1 baseball declared like Eric Backage as like the midseason coach of the year, which I think is incredible. They have slowly been going around the number 1 through 3 seed in the country for the last 2-3 weeks, which I think is incredible. The only red flag that I see is how long can you be playing this good baseball before, because every team has its dry spell. Every baseball team has its dry spell. So it might seem a little bit too good to be true, but if this team continues to play its best baseball and is playing its baseball at the best points in June through July, you're looking at a team that most likely will be in Omaha for the College World Series.
Dude, I've already booked my ticket. Like, I'm just saying, like, I've already booked my ticket to Omaha. And, I mean, no, that's a joke. But yeah, I mean,
they're just drive out there. It's a really pretty drive. I can firsthand experience. But.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going if they make it for sure. Well, I'll figure out a way to get there. But yeah, man, this team, I'm telling you, man, it's going to be hard to knock this team off. They're just too good. 1 through 15, man. I mean, you could really throw anybody in there in that lineup, and I think it would. I don't think you would see a fall off. They're just that good. Like, here's the thing: there are several teams in Clemson athletics that have used the transfer portal great, and the only one who I feel like hasn't is the football team. And because baseball did it great, softball did it great, soccer did it great, and then and so I mean. Yeah, basketball did great. I mean, everybody's used the portal except Dabo. But I mean, that's not a knock on Dabo. I'm just saying, no, and I'm not holding my breath on that. But like, I just think they used the portal. The baseball, getting back to the baseball team, they used the portal very well this year, and the portal has worked well for them. everybody's when one person's not hitting on that team, everybody else is. The only thing which I think they're getting close for these past few weekends, I think they're getting close, but starting pitching is starting to come around. And because they only gave up 5 runs against Miami, 5. They gave up 1 run, and really that 1 run was a crap run against USC Upstate. So yeah, I mean the pitching's
My
coming
alma mater,
around.
by the way.
Yeah, I knew that. And but I was at that game. That game was fun, man. So I just think that this baseball team's getting good. Their pitching's getting good. Their hitting's good. Fielding's great. You know, well, they did make 2 errors against USC Upstate, but they just hit the ball like nobody's business on Tuesday. So, but you know, they could be a little better in the field, maybe a little bit, you know, making little stupid errors here and there. But they just find a way to win. And like you said, every team has their goes through their slump. And I think that will happen. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and the only team on our schedule that I could see us losing a series to, which I don't even see this happening, but I can see it, would be Wake Forest. And it's because it's on the road. But we play great on the road. Like, I think we've played great. We played great at Miami. We lost that first game, but you know, we bounced back. That pitcher for Miami just was he just was throwing junk and got 15 strikeouts. But yeah,
happens.
crazy. Yeah, it happens, you know. But I just think, again, I'm gonna say it again. I don't think there's anybody from 1 to 15 that they couldn't throw in that top 9, and you know, let's be great. I don't know why we're not number 1.
Should be.
It's because we really should be. We should be number 1.
It's because
after
of
that
the name
Florida
of the
State
jersey.
game.
That's exactly why it is.
Yeah, I really think we should have been number 1 after the Florida State sweep.
Right.
But because Arkansas lost a game. They didn't lose the series, but they lost a game.
Well, they might not be number 1 in the poll, but they're number 1 in our hearts, and that's the most important thing, right?
Yep,
that's
matters. Right. That's all that matters.
Well, cool, guys. Well, I tell you what, good to be back with you guys tonight. I know, Griffin, you went back home for spring break. Hopefully, lots of good R&R, rest and relaxation. And, hey, look, we're getting back into the thick of it. We're on the stretch run for baseball and softball. Spring football ending, spring game coming up on Saturday. That's at 1 p.m. at Death Valley. So get out there and support the Tigers. Check those guys out. And we'll be back with another episode of Around the Paul next week, and we'll tell you what our thoughts on the spring game. We'll talk some more baseball, softball, spring sports then as well. But in the meantime, check us out at ClemsonSportsMedia.com. We've got lots of great content coming every single day. Lots of cool stories from myself, from Griffin, from Cliff, and our talented cast of writers. And then give us a like and subscribe here on YouTube. It helps us out with the algorithm as well. And follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at CU Sports Media. So we'll see you out there. And until next time, as we always say, good luck, Godspeed, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.